What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 444 of Opinions May Vary. I'm your host, JR. Joining me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Alex.
Hello.
Hey, man.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. Thanks for calling me lovely.
You know,
I appreciate that.
There was an adjective I was supposed to use last week, but I already forgot what it was that Amanda told me to use, but it flew out of my head. Was it fantastical? I can't remember. But whatever it was, it's you're that. Okay, we have a fun episode in store, and I've been looking forward to this one. We've been setting this one up. I guess I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm just having fun. So joining us right now, waiting for me to stop talking, is comic artist Joe Eisma. Joe, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
When Alex and I were talking about chatting with you, we were like, where is, because like time zones are a thing,
right,
especially when trying to line up an interview.
Mm-hmm.
They can be fun and tricky to deal with, especially at the further out west, because we're on the East Coast. And I could have sworn, because I believe it's one of the only times that I've met you at a convention.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, Alex, maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it was Hartford Comic Con.
It was
back when that existed.
Wow. Yeah, that was a while ago.
One of 2
years. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So if for some reason I just assumed, because I met you at that show, I was like, oh, he's got to be East Coast. Like, why else would he be at Hartford Comic Con? I didn't realize that you're out in Texas.
Yeah.
But we were able to get this set up. So thanks again for coming on. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. It's funny because that show, like my old art dealer he's based out of the New England area, so that's why I did like tons of shows up and down the East Coast, and that's how I ended up at that show. But yeah, I'm Texas born and raised.
You're having a little bit. Usually when we get started, I'll inevitably, because I'm old, I'll bring up the weather. And us here we're in Connecticut. We just got hammered with a fun little snowstorm. So like I can't even. It's just such habit to bring up the weather with people. But then I realize you're probably in a different situation than us. So I can't even.
It's weird because there's this stupid saying in Texas, like, if you don't like the weather, just wait a while, it'll change. And it's pretty true, because it was 69 degrees here today and sunny, but we're getting our weather portion Wednesday night. We're getting wintry mix and sleet, snow, and all of that. And the thing about my area, because I'm in the Dallas area, I don't understand what it is. I guess it's just because it happens so rarely, but nobody in my metropolitan area can drive in ice. And it's I dread it every time I see that sleet thing in the weather or icy rain. Oh God. But we actually, of course, we kind of, Texas, we kind of get a little nervous with cold weather anyway, because last February we had a major ice storm, and the power was out statewide for the longest time. And I don't know how my family and I lucked into this, but we had just bought a house a few months before that, and we were in a new neighborhood, and we didn't lose power once. But
oh wow,
the guy who was one of my best friends, who lived a street over from my old house, they were without power for 9 days. So my whole neighborhood, if I'd stayed there, would have been out of power, in sub-zero temperatures for 9 or so days. And I kept telling him, I was like, come over here, we've got power. But, of course, everybody's kind of panicking because of COVID anyway, too. So
right.
It's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pre-vaccine. So it was still.
It was pre-vaccine.
Yeah. I have family who live in San Antonio, and a lot of our conversations are always, when they see that we're getting hammered with snow and all that stuff, they'll message us and be like, you need to come visit. I'm outside of my t-shirt today, and whereas they got buried, they lost power. They were, sitting in blankets in 30-degree weather, and it was the strangest series of events. It was you just don't expect that in Texas.
I know. It was so weird, and I keep it's like, of course, oh, global warming is not a thing, because like this never happened before, and Texas, we don't really get that though, but we do get, we occasionally get snow, we get ice, but my area especially, like, we get a lot of tornadoes, and that's really the problem, and like, boy, I don't know, like, which one's worse, like being hammered with snow or having to, deal with like, that the stress of tornadoes, but every area, I guess, has got its little, I guess, quirks.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad this is why, the show's taken a turn. We're transitioning to weather. It's just as I get older, it's all I care about. I just get up in the morning and I check I have the pleasure and the privilege, the comfort I get, whatever. I'm very privileged to be able to work from home, and I still get up and I'm like, oh, what's the weather? Oh my God, it's 15 degrees. What's going on? It's so, getting old is a son of a bitch. But
no, I totally understand. And like, I've not gotten to that point yet where I can, that old man thing, like, oh, my knee is aching. I guess we're going to get a real, cold one today. But thankfully I'm not there yet. But I'm kind of like you. I'm pretty acutely tuned into the weather situation.
It's, and you never see it coming either. It's just one day you don't care and the next day you do. It's
right.
Aging, man.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about some comics.
Yeah, let's do it.
For people who,
what is this weather?
Right? It turns out Joe he's not a meteorologist. He's actually a comic artist, which is the main reason why we're chatting. You'd never know from the first 10 minutes that we just spent talking about the weather. But Joe, again, I was introduced to, Alex knew who you were at Harvard Comic Con. I was unaware. I hadn't been introduced. I can't remember. What year was Harvard Comic? Was that like 2013 or 14? It was a while ago.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was like 8 or so years ago, right?
It had to be within our first 4 years, because one of those 2 times we had a team up with Getting Your Nerd On, and we went together.
Oh.
Right. Yeah, there was an old YouTube channel. And they had been guests on our show in the past, and we brought them. They came along to the show. It was fun. But yeah, nice. I had met you there, and Alex had introduced us because he was familiar with Morning Glories, and he'd always explained it to me, like, you're not necessarily going to know what's going on the entire time, but that's like part of the charm.
It really was.
Charm.
Alex, had you picked up? Was that a book that you had been starting from the beginning? I can't remember.
No, at some point I managed to get a couple of trades in a row. And so if I had just one issue at a time, I don't know if I would have stuck with it because I'd be too confused. And at this point in my life, I'd be real jaded, be like, issue 1 was really good, but could they hold on to this magic? Well, now I have all 10 trades. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to read all of them because it's been so long that I can't just start back at trade number 6 or volume 6. I'd have to start all over again to keep track of all the people and the characters. We'll get that later. But yeah, it's like coming off of Lost and X-Files and kind of having a mystery going on with some time skips, and Morning Glories is what I wanted out of that kind of genre, because I hated Fringe so much. I couldn't stand Fringe, and that was like the worst version of what comes after Lost. It's Fringe. Please shoot me. So instead, getting Morning Glories is like, yeah, this is better. Can I more of this, please? And that's where I started off, and coming to see you drew a sketch cover for me. I got some Baron Zemo on a Captain America, and
I love Baron.
And one of the things I had asked about at the time, between being a comic fan and talking to other artists and trying to get them on the show and everything and do stuff like that, so many other artists are very like, do they get started drawing superhero comics to draw lots of muscles and people punching each other in capes? And then I look at your books and it's like, there's a lot of people and a lot of clothes. Without leading into all the superhero muscles and capes and everything, and just even from Morning Glories alone, there's so many characters and there's so many teenagers, and having to draw all of them differently so they can be recognized. It's a visual medium, and we can tell them all apart. And then a lot of them are just wearing different forms of their school uniform. And one of my questions was, is this something was it, I guess, fun or intriguing, or is this something like comes naturally to you? And how hard do you have to pay attention to fashion and what people are wearing and how clothes sit on them? I guess it's really just drawing clothes question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's so funny. It's like a great question because I love drawing clothes. So I don't know if it makes me weird, but it's funny though. With Morning Glories, when I first started on this book, I really had no idea like how big the cast was going to be. And let me tell you, never again. Every writer, I'm like, please keep the cast small. This is like it was monstrous. It was so many characters, and then he kept adding new ones, and I'm like, well, stop. We have so many. You don't need any more. But yeah, it's funny. Yeah, like a lot of artists, they get into it, like they want to draw, muscles and stuff. And I mean, I like drawing that stuff too. I love drawing superheroes. But for some reason, I guess maybe it's the kinds of artists that influenced me. I got more interested in drapery, like the way clothes, bend and fold over the body and stuff. And for some reason, like that's my jam. That's what I like to draw. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it makes me weird or what, but it was definitely, that was one of the appealing aspects. And like, of course, making them all unique because they're all teenagers, and teenagers, they all think they're the coolest thing ever, and they're like the most unique individual out there. So giving them their own like looks and their own personalities coming out through their fashion, that was like, there was a challenge, but it was something that I really enjoyed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to watch when Chris Anka was doing Runaways was on his Instagram. He would just draw like the character in a pose and then just do different outfits and different fashion choices. And like, that was one of my favorite things to see pop up it's the character, like, let's say Nico was the goth witch sorceress girl. And he would just have different iterations of what a modern day teenager might be wearing. And like, I was like, these are all great. And then I forget his name now. The dude with the fistigons, he had a whole different outfit and wardrobe. And I was like, these all fit the character and it's neat. And because I grew up with stupid cartoons where everyone wore the same outfit forever. And growing up, it was interesting seeing all these choices that, an overreaching person is making choices for the characters. And that intrigues me. And I don't know. I'm not a person who's into fashion. I'm a dumb grunt who pushes boxes with his hands. And so I don't know anything about fashion, but I like seeing it happen in front of me.
Yeah, that was really stressful because, I'm an older, I'm like a 40-something dude, and I'm like, I'm not a teenager. So, having to try and find before Instagram, Tumblr was where I found most of my inspiration. And I don't even think Tumblr's really a thing anymore. But like now Instagram is what I use these days. I follow like different because people post on there their outfit of the day, hashtag outfit of the day. And there's all kinds of just different people that have really cool outfits and different, clothing stores that, are geared towards, that demographic that I follow. Because, I mean, it's another thing I think not a lot of artists, but there are some artists that they just shy away from using reference. But you can't really get it right out of your head all the time. And I feel like if you're trying to make someone look like, age authentic, then you really do need to do the research. You really do need to see what they're wearing, what kids are wearing, at any given time when you're working on stuff. And if you don't do that, then if you just try to wing it. And like that's to me, I'm not trying to be mean, but to me, that's like hacky. If you're just trying to wing it, you're like, oh, I know good enough. I'll just wing it. No, you don't always know. So don't hesitate to look for inspiration. Pinterest, I forget to mention Pinterest. Pinterest is also a great one. So yeah.
I actually had the exact same note in my notes. It was one of the first things because Alex was one of the main influences, because I've read the first 3 trades, so up to issue 19, I believe. So I haven't read the current run as it is out, because I believe it's out to what, 50 at the moment.
Yeah.
And when Alex was telling me about the book, the whole thing I mentioned earlier about how you're not really going to know what's going on, and that's part of the appeal, but also the fact that he pointed out these kids are pretty much wearing a school uniform. So a lot of them look exactly the same, but you've somehow managed to make them all look unique, despite the fact that they're wearing very similar outfits, So I had the same thing in my notes. It's just from someone, again, and I reference this all the time, I don't have an art brain. I don't have a brain that works in art. So to think about stuff like that is just how do people do this?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I didn't go to art school. I went to college. I studied film because I was like, oh, I'm going to be a director and a editor and a screenwriter. But of course, when I finished school, there really wasn't a lot of opportunities in Texas for it. And the girl I was dating at the time was Texas based, and she didn't want to move out to the East Coast or the West Coast. So I was like, well, I'm kind of stuck. So I ended up doing a program for game design, and I had that was my only formal art training. It was an 18-month program, and I worked in game design for 10 years. But part of that curriculum was I had a life drawing class, and I'd never taken a life drawing class, but actually being in a classroom with a live model, and we did male and female models, clothed and fully nude and all that, and it was the best experience I've ever had as an artist, or in terms of growing my skill set. Because when you're looking at someone right in front of you and you're trying to recreate it, your brain, I don't know, it's something goes off on your brain. It does different things than when you're just trying to conjure it out of your imagination. So that was always an appealing thing for me for the outfits that the kids wore. Was let me look at actual photos of people and see, they don't always wear their school blazers or whatever, or they'll have a sweater and it's tied around their waist or whatever. Sometimes the tie will be loosened, and sometimes the kids are, some kids are more dressy about it than others. Some really dress down. So it was definitely a concern of mine because of the fact that it takes place at a private school, and you don't want them to all look samey,
Right.
But they do have different outfits, and that one thing that I did always fight for with Nick was just give me situations where they're going to change their clothes. I mean, I know we have arcs, and sometimes these arcs maybe take place over a day or two, but I was the next arc, let this be a couple days later, because they got to do laundry. I always, I love shows. I grew up. You mentioned cartoons is I love Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo is one of my all-time favorites. But I'm they wear the same clothes all the time.
Every episode, yeah.
Do they never wash their clothes? Yeah.
It's
funny you would mention. Oh, go ahead, Alex. I had the last one.
I'm stuck name dropping for the moment. But when we talked to Georges Genti, when he was drawing Buffy, he asked his writer, it's all right, where does Buffy shop? And they go, Anthropology. And he goes, nailed it. Now he has a catalog to look at.
Yeah.
And can immediately know where to draw from.
Oh man, that's so nice. I wish I gotten that from Nick. I had to do that all myself.
It just goes to show the work that you put into the book.
Oh.
It's clear. I mean, the book, Eisner nominated. It goes without saying. At least from what I've read, it's an enticing. It's one of the first books that I've picked up because I've been reading comics since around 2009 ish, and I started with The Walking Dead. It's a zombie book. It gets heavy at times, but you know what it is.
Yeah.
Whereas with Morning Glories, you're reading it, and right, it's nonlinear. And even like looking at the Wikipedia, it says it's written nonlinear, frequently utilizing flashbacks or flash forwards to confuse, misdirect, and inform the reader. And I'm like, that's how I felt reading it. I felt confused and misdirected, but also informed.
Yeah, that was key. I mean, like not our two. Like let me pinpoint like our main influence. Our main influence, of course, was, Alex mentioned Lost. Lost was probably our biggest influence for the storytelling. And then, of course, we always pitched it as Lost meets Runaways, because Runaways, was pretty big at the time. And Nick and I both adore Runaways. And so like that was the general vibe that we're going for. But we sprinkled in like some other bits too, like Gossip Girl, the original Gossip Girl. That was actually a pretty big influence for me for fashion. I would watch Gossip Girl pretty religiously, even though it's a teen soap. But like whoever their costume designer is on that show, they deserve all the awards, because the clothes in that show were just phenomenal. And like that was the exact vibe that I was going for that private school. And then the other one was The Prisoner, the old British TV series. And you kind of put that all in a mix, and that was kind of where we were. And so it lent to some really off the wall storytelling, which I'm honestly, even to this day, really surprised that it hit as hard as it did, because in my business, or in this business, like you do lots of things and you never know which one is going to be the one. And this one was pretty early in my career too, because my first book was published in 2008. Morning Glories came out 2 years later. So I was genuinely blown away. I mean, I loved the concept, when I first pitched it, and I was like, this is so great, but you never know. And that's what was so exciting,
On your Facebook, I think it was within the past year, maybe sooner, I think you had opened up commissions or sketches, and one of the commenters, I think, was one of your friends. They go, okay, so how much to do 22 pages of issue 51? And like that led to that was a series of jokes, and I was like, aha.
Yeah. And I was like, gosh, the bane of my existence.
He gets this a lot, apparently.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, it's really weird. So the book has been on hiatus since 2016, when issue 50 came out. And I say hiatus and not ending, because it is on hiatus. There is still plans to pick it back up, but at the end of the day, that's out of my hands. That's always Nick. Nick is the one, and I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. I mean, he'll freely admit he's the holdup. But it was just really weird. When we first started, we were all really young in the industry. We were so excited to cut our teeth and everything, and we got going. And then, of course, Nick started taking on all kinds of other jobs. He started working at Marvel. He did a little bit at DC, and I think he will admit too that he got spread a little too thin. And so during the run of our singles, our initial run, I mean, the schedule started to slip, because he was, really, like I said, he was spread thin. But I think by the time we wrapped, we wrapped this first kind of, half or whatever of the book, I know he was really just exhausted. And, he had a whole lot of other stuff going on. Then, he ended up doing the Captain America thing, that whole
Hydra.
Yeah, the Hail Hydra. And I mean, I'm sure, you'd have to talk to Nick, but I know how much that affected him, how everything that, came out of that, the reaction and the stuff that was said, which a lot of it was really unfair toward him. That would affect anybody,
Yeah.
So I know he withdrew quite a bit. And I'm not blaming, that, but I'm just saying that was a factor for him kind of just pulling back a little bit, and then just kind of settling into Spider-Man for several years. I would always check in with him, because, the thing about working at Image and, being a creator on book is, you get paid, periodically, whatever, but like with these trades that come out, you get paid like twice a year with like royalty sales or whatever. So he would always check in at least twice a year with the royalty sales, and we would chat for a little bit, and he would say, yeah, no, I need to write. But, he pretty much shut down his social media completely. So, I am the only one that ever, has like pretty much everybody on a creative team does not have social media or is not active on their social media. I'm the only one. And so, of course, anybody who's trying to find any kind of news or whatever, they're going to find me. And I understand this. I understand, like, they don't understand how many times I've been asked. You're like, when's it coming back? And I'm like, no, not even a week goes by. But it's fine. I like I said, I get it. I understand. I do appreciate it. I am so grateful that there are fans that are wanting it to come back. And I feel for you. I am right there with you. I want it to come back too. But there were some false starts and everything. Like 2 years ago, I guess, man, I can't believe it was 2 years ago that the pandemic really started. Whenever the world first shut down, back in like March 2020, nobody knew what to do. I know that like a lot of retailers were hurting and everything. And so I know a lot of creators kind of started, trying to do like charity things for, to benefit retailers.
Right.
And so Nick reached out to me and he's like, hey, why don't we do like a little ash can preview of the new season of Morning Glories and auction that off? And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah, of course. So I was like, I'll believe this when I see it. And I told my wife, who I was just dating at the time, I was like, I'll believe this when I see it. And sure enough, like within a couple of days, I started getting script pages. I was like, oh my God. I like dropped everything I was doing and I just read them. Cause like even back when I was working on the book before we put on hiatus, like I was excited to read the scripts. Like I would get them from Nick and I would read them like as a fan. I'd be like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And I would read it as a fan. Then I would go back and read it as the artist and figure out how I was going to draw it. And it was like putting on a shoe again, like, a comfy shoe, or riding a bike again. It was like that whole same reaction. And we ended up doing like 7 or 8 pages or something like that. I can't remember. And we auctioned it, and whoever won the auction, they got the exclusive rights to the PDF of it, because we just did it black and white because, it was all for charity. So we didn't want to, impose on our creative team, like, hey, let's color and letter this, you guys, but we're not gonna be able to pay you because, it's all going to charity.
Right.
So we just left it black and white because, Nick and I we were like, we're doing this for the fans, and it was pretty popular. I don't know what's going to happen though, because like the winner has that, and it's the first kind of Morning Glory stuff that has been done in like going on like 6 years now, and well, at the time, like 4 or 5 years or whatever. But I would love to post those pages. I'd love to post that whole PDF just to like, not necessarily get people off my back, but to just maybe like say, hey, look, it's still here. There's still something that, here's something to tide you over. But, I don't want to like step on the person's toes who rightfully won it, with their auction or whatever.
Right.
But, so again, but then like, it's kind of like, Nick went quiet again. There is more Morning Glories coming, but there's just things going on in everybody's lives. I know that's not the answer everybody wants to hear, but yeah, I mean, I still talk to Nick pretty regularly, so I mean, I have hope we can do something. I would hope we could do it this year, but I don't know the way these production schedules work. If we were to do anything at this point, I mean, we'd have to like start like within the next couple of weeks to get it out this year, which would be so great since it's Image's, anniversary this year. The 92 was when the Image formed, and so it'd be so great if we could do something for the 30th. But I just don't even know if it's going to happen at this point. I've actually I've asked Nick a few times, like, what if we just brought in someone to like script? You could lay out the plots or whatever, and someone else could just script it. I have lots of writer friends that are interested in that, but Nick's very protective of this, and I understand. So he's always kind of said no on that idea, which is fine. I respect his decision, but I've often joked that if I took over writing it, then first thing I do would be like, for some reason, all the school's desks would be burned down and there'd be no more desks because I have desks. And like, there would never be a scene that takes place in the forest again, because like there was the whole Wood Run saga. Like I got so tired of drawing trees. But yeah, of course I'm not totally serious or anything with that.
We saw an artist at a convention who was there was a panel on like starting to draw and starting on comics, and the artist says, okay, what an artist wants to see is a script saying, so Itchy says to Scratchy, and then you continue. What we don't want to see is, it was raining in the bicycle graveyard of 100-mile iron fence.
Right? Yeah. So
Sounds like hell.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little meme comic, whatever, that's like goes around, and it's like a writer and an artist at a convention, and like the writer talks, I can't remember it exactly, but the writer talks about like how he can write this like really epic scene or whatever, and he's gonna write this epic scene with like all this massive armies and stuff, and then the next panel is the artist is like, I'll kill you. He just doesn't want to draw all that stuff, because like, yeah, you can write all, it takes you however long it is to type those words out, and then it takes me days to draw that Lord of the Rings style battle.
And you had mentioned earlier about how the team getting bigger and there's more people to draw. I remember reading, following Greg Capullo on Twitter. He would routinely tweet, he has no interest in doing team books. Keep me away from team books. No, thank you. I don't want a team book, because drawing all those people is exhausting. And it's just, as a reader, it's not, at least an unartistic, and I don't know how to put it, like myself, I don't think about stuff like that. I'm just like, yeah, Justice League, let me read the Justice League. Drawing a team book, there's so much goes into it, because you need to know so much about each character and how they're supposed to look and move and feel, and it's just, in addition to drawing thousands of trees and desks, and it's all those little things you don't think about.
Well, it was surprising. Like I read those comments too when I was, before I started drawing comics. I was like, oh, whatever. I would totally draw a team book or whatever. And then I ended up drawing a book with like the most massive cast I've ever seen or whatever. And I'm like, never again. Because like I said, like I always plead with all my writers that, if they want to work on a pitch together or something, I'm like, I'm not doing this if you're going to have a big cast. All right. I can't do this again.
Yep. The pitch wasn't okay. There's 6 students and like 2 teachers, and then 300 other students.
It was nothing like that. I mean, like the original pitch was just like the first issue script, and like first issue script, it had, I mean, there were, it was at the school, so of course there were like the background students and stuff. So I understood that. And then there were these characters at the beginning. I thought they were throwaway characters. I never thought we'd see them again. And then they show up like 20 issues later. I'm like,
right.
If I had known they were going to come back, Nick, I would have spent a little bit more on their design.
And as a fan, like, it's so easy to just assume, well, you created it, you drew it, you must obviously know. I remember at New York Comic, and we're just name dropping left and right here. New York Comic Con a couple years ago, I was getting a sketch from Ryan Otley, and one of my favorite characters in Invincible is this guy is like a B villain that shows up in a couple issues named Powerplex.
Oh yeah.
And I remember at one point he was sketching it out, and he turned to like his helper, and he was like, "Hey, what do his ears look like? I can't remember what I did for his ears." And we pulled it up. It's because he didn't have ears. His costume covers his ears.
Oh, wow.
But like you just assume. Yeah. It's so easy to assume, well, obviously you have to know, but especially with so many people, so many characters,
almost have to keep like a database, because one thing that was really nice and I loved about Morning Glories times, like when we first hit and the book took off, we developed a following, and we had this really dedicated group of online fans. They did a chat, online chat every time an issue came out. Nick and I would join in on the chat and chat with them. It was so awesome. They were really active on Tumblr. Tumblr was huge for Morning Glories way back when, and like I would look sometimes at their avatars, and they'd have an avatar, some random character. I was like, I don't even remember drawing that. I'm like, who is that? Like, that my art? Oh, it is my art. Who is that? I don't even remember drawing it. I'm like, and I have all the files on my computer. I'm like, I'll never find it. I don't know who it is. But it's funny. I think Alex mentioned at the beginning, like, or JR, I don't know if it was you, like, you haven't finished the series because you got to pick up from the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
Nick, every time he would start a new arc, is he would start from issue 1. He would reread before he started writing, and I'm like, are you serious? You're the writer and you're rereading the book from issue 1 to keep track of everything? But I mean, because I always asked him too. I was like, you must have like a file on this. He's like, no, it's all in my head. He's like, and he told me, yeah, he told me jokingly at New York Comic Con one year, it's like, if I get hit by a bus, I mean, you're screwed. I'm like, thanks, Nick.
This whole story's gone.
You always hear how like some writers have notes or like a book of notes. Robert Jordan had notes for Wheel of Time, and George R. R. Martin has notes for Game of Thrones, and I'm picturing just like Charlie Day with the string on the wall.
Yeah, I don't know if that like destroys the mystique of the book or not for some readers, but like, yeah, Nick, they'll be like, he really doesn't have a plan because it's all in his head. He doesn't have anything written down, and then he has to reread the book from the first issue before he starts writing to remember how everything is like arranged and everything. But I mean, just the way his mind works. I mean, he makes it work. That we've done, like it all works together, and I know subsequent arcs would work as well. But I just thought it was funny that he would reread it, because I mean, when you're working on a book, you're so attached to it that you kind of lose that sort of naivety of like the fan approach to it, I guess. Like, other than like I told you, like when I would get new scripts, I would read them as a fan first. I actually have not read Morning Glories as a reader. I don't think ever, actually, because part of it is like, I'll look at the books and I'll like, oh God, I wish I could redraw this. It's like so much. Nick and I talked about this before. We talked about like, what if we just redid the entire first arc, just like George Lucas the shit out of it, just special edition, throw in some Jawas and shit. I don't know, but no, we weren't serious. But like, we really did think like, what if we could just redraw it and rewrite it a little bit, But no, there's no way we could do that.
That is something that I wanted to ask about, was with a book like this, where stories where there is going to be an ending. It's not like Spider-Man, which is going to run until the heat death of the universe. Referencing a book, one of my favorite books ever is Chew. And I remember reading in a lot of interviews, like John Layman would always, the ending is, because it's so like, where is this going? And he always say, I know what the ending is. Only I know the ending, and Rob knows the ending. That's it. So I was curious, like, has Nick included you in on like where the book is going? Because you mentioned you read it as a fan. It's what's going to happen in this issue. So this is kind of like a two-parter. Like, do you know where it's ultimately going to end up, or and like does it impact how you draw it, knowing that this might be bouncing around with flash forwards or flashbacks, things like that? Does that impact how you approach drawing it?
That's a great two-part question. And to the first part, whether I know the ending, hell no, I don't know the ending, because he won't tell me. So he's so stingy with what he tells people. Like he was like hesitant, like he used to be hesitant to give me script, because he thought, I don't know if he thought I was just going to go tell everybody. And I'm like, what am I going to tell everybody?
Kind of has to.
Yeah. So no, I don't know, but like it's funny because like I kind of mentioned earlier, like I wish I had known some stuff. Like the very first issue, again, like there were some characters at the beginning sequence. I thought they were throwaway characters. They came back later, like in our third arc, and I was like, I didn't know they were coming back. Like, I was glad because like I kind of liked them. Like I said, I wish I had spent a little bit more time on their designs, but whatever. I ended up tweaking them as the run went on. But it would be nice. Like I think that his justification for not telling me is because he doesn't want it to paint like my, no pun intended, my rendering or whatever of the series or affect like my storytelling. I don't know. That may be just his frilly, tap dancing around, him just not wanting to share, or, some people like to say he doesn't know what he's doing. So maybe he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't know. He's a pretty mysterious guy, that Nick, which is pretty apropos for the book, I guess. So.
He is one of the few writers to almost make me cry with a comic book.
Wow.
I believe because it was an issue of Spider-Man. Because I had never been big into Spider-Man, but when him and Otley were on Spider-Man, I was like, okay, that's good enough excuse to pick up Spider-Man. And there was like a
Craven's Hunt,
like an in-between book. Sorry?
The Craven's Hunt one?
It was in that arc.
Yeah.
Of like the Craven's Last Hunt or whatever it was called. I can't remember exactly. But there was a side issue that focused Alex, we've talked about this. I can't remember his name.
It was like a gorilla dude.
Right. It wasn't Wendigo. It was I can't remember. But like he ends up like dying. And like it's a super sad issue because he just wants to be left alone, but people are hunting him. And I'm like, I'm like just trying to relax on my lunch break, and I'm like almost in tears from this freaking comic book. But anyways, that Nick Spencer, man, you know,
he's a great writer. I mean, I'll tease him and stuff, and I'll jokingly talk trash about him. I really do think he is a fantastic writer. He's so skilled. And honestly, I mean, like some of the stuff he's made me draw it made me emotional because like, I'm like, this is just really heavy stuff. And I can't believe he managed to make me care so much about these characters like this. And I know, you know, he's had that effect on our readers too with, you know, when certain characters get killed off or something, you know, tragic happens in their lives, you know, and they get really attached to the characters and it's really emotional. So, I mean, yeah, he's got a skill for that. He knows how to play on the heartstrings when he wants to.
Mm-hmm. Those comic books. So I want, like, with it being on hiatus since, like you said, 2016. I mean, Saga fans, we didn't even know how good we had it. Only a 3-year break, but good things come to those who wait. We'll see. We'll see what the future holds. Supposedly there's going to be 100 issues at some point. So hopefully sooner rather than later. But you know, whenever it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
You know? But in the meantime, you've been busy on other stuff.
Yeah. So you know, whenever Morning Glories was taking off, you know, Nick was jumping on every property. I don't know if y'all remember that or whatever. I mean, like you'd see his name on everything almost. And I was really just like. I was like, I want to maintain on Morning Glories. I'm going to like try and, you know, keep the ship afloat or whatever. So, you know, as soon as, you know, he started kind of checking out and the thing started going on hiatus, I was like, I gotta, you know, all this stuff that I didn't pursue, I gotta like make up for lost time. So yeah, I've tried to, you know, work with anybody and everybody that I could on properties that I've, you know, been a huge fan of all my life. So it's been great. Yeah, I've been busy and like that's the way I like it because I love to draw and I love to draw comics. And that was like my biggest frustration. And Nick knows this. I mean, you know, with his like being spread too thin was like, I just want to draw comics, you know? So I ended up like drawing as much as I can, like from like 2016 on, like I have like pursued as much as I can. Sometimes, you know, like my wife was like, are you sure about this? You're drawing like 2 books a month now or whatever. I'm like, no. I love it. I want to do this. Ebbs and its flows or whatever. So like, you know, like right now I'm only working on one thing. But you know, I've had instances where sometimes I've had to juggle 3, not 4, but at least 3 different things sometimes. And that's kind of stressful, but I mean, when you love your job, I mean, you'll do the work. And yeah, so I've gotten to work like, you know, with pretty much every publisher, but I haven't done anything with Marvel yet. But, you know, I've had a blast. I mean, Archie has been fantastic to me. And all kinds of publishers, you know, I honestly, like, I just feel like I needed to, have a bibliography because like I literally had like 3 books on my resume or whatever, you know, for a while. I was like, I need to add to this. I need to really make my mark. So yeah, I've tried to be busy.
It's imagining trying to sell yourself to someone who may not have heard of you and they go, I've only got like 3 titles. It's like, okay, but one of those titles has 50 issues, dude. It was, you know, over 5 years versus like, oh, I worked on 30 different titles. It's like, yeah, but you did 8 pages in each one. What's the difference?
Right.
So I guess, were you already like, were you a longtime fan of Archie to get all this Archie work, or has like the newer modern stuff really intrigued you and that's something you wanted to jump on?
Well, I loved the little Archie Digest. My older sister, she was like nobody else in my family really read comics. But my sister did read the Archie stuff, and like when I was a kid, I would read any comic. I was like so into comics, like I had to read comics, and so I would read the Archie digests too. Even though like as a I was more into the X-Men and Spider-Man and Wolverine and all that stuff back then. But like so like the Archie stuff when I was a kid, I was like, I don't care about this dude and his girl problems, but I always liked Jughead. I thought Jughead was great, and I loved his goofy looking design and everything. So, but I would just read what she would buy, and then when they announced the relaunch with Mark Waid and Fiona Staples, I was like, oh my god, that's perfect, and I started buying the series again, and I loved it. I loved that take, and so when they offered me the spot to take over, like I think on the third arc or something like that with the Cheryl Blossom arc, I leapt at it, and like I had to do little like some tests and stuff, but thankfully they dug what I did, and it was really treated me so well over the years. And I every time I talk to people about the stuff I've done for Archie, like I've drawn like pretty much any version of Archie you can imagine, from the Fiona Staples version to the Riverdale comic adaptation, to like Jughead the Hunger, the horror stuff. And, I even did one in the classic Archie style when we did the Archies where they met the monkeys. And that was probably the hardest thing I've ever drawn, because like to draw something like an entire issue outside of your style, I mean, like I felt like I'm doing this wrong. My hand is broken, but it was so fun. It was just a nice challenge at the end of the day. But like, yeah, I love all those characters, love who they are at the core. There's some that I still really even haven't gotten a chance to do much with. I really want to, and I hopefully, eventually, like, we can come back and I can do some of those characters. But I love Archie and the franchise. Like, every character, like, they have so many great attributes, and they've been around for so long, and like the core of those characters is still there. And just to speak of tangents, as you mentioned earlier. That just reminds me of a New York Comic Con I was at a few years ago, where we launched the Archies, which is the series of them as a band, and they would go meet real bands and stuff like that. Anyway, it was like Archie's 75th anniversary or something like that. Anyway, I had someone come and like buy a book, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's cool. Are you the original Archie artist?" And I was like, "Archie, what?" I mean, I have gray hair, but I mean, like, I'm like in my 40s. I was like, I'm not that old. So, but I'm glad I got to be part of that 75 years, or what is it now, 80 something. But yeah,
it's one of those things that it takes some growth and some maturity to realize. It's like when I was younger buying comic books and I wanted my X-Men or, Spawn or something. I'm like, no, get that Archie away from me. It's for kids or it's for girls or something.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's a legacy title. Like, that's, for it to be around longer than I've been alive, it's, it's like you show some respect. And having the chance to relaunch it with some new ideas, and it's like there's vampires and werewolves now. It's like, oh, like how about it's a little different than what you expect, isn't it? And so,
yeah,
like it's fun. I respect that.
Yeah, I love how experimental they've been, and really a lot of it is Roberto, the guy who's the showrunner on Riverdale. He brought in the Afterlife with Archie, and the Sabrina book that became the Netflix series, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. And, I love that they kind of embraced horror too. I'm a big horror film aficionado. I love watching horror films. And so when they asked me to come on and work on Jughead the Hunger, I was like, yes, absolutely. And, Sabrina is that's the number one. That's the one I want to work on the most. And I got to draw her a little bit when they had her crossover, when they had Jughead crossover with Vampironica, which, I mean, come on, that's such a great title, Vampironica. And so I got to draw her a little bit in there. So I was like, I need like a mini series where I get to draw Sabrina, the teenage witch, and because I'm such a cat person, and Salem, like the original Sabrina, I actually watched that sitcom Sabrina with Melissa Joan Hart like all the time because I love Salem. And I mean, the Netflix version was great too. I mean, it's a different vibe, but I love Salem, and one of my cats is a little black cat. So I'm like, if I could draw a black cat, that'd be just so great.
Those little bucket list things.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's nice to see artists kind of living the dream, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you've been doing other work with other publishers as well.
Sure.
I've been interested to talk about ENGINEWARD with Vault Comics.
Yeah.
Now, this is honestly the first time I've heard of Vault Comics myself.
Yeah.
What's it been like working with them? According to Wikipedia, they've been around since about 2016.
Yeah.
And you also did work with Aftershock, who's been around in 2015, who started in 2015. What's it been like working with these newer-ish publishers as opposed to, Archie and Image and DC, who've been around for years and years?
Well, they're both great for different reasons. Vault, I was introduced to the brothers, the Wassel brothers, who founded Vault and run Vault, Adrian and Damien, through Tim Daniel, who was our designer for Morning Glories. He designed our logo. He did all our pre-press stuff. I've known him for years. He's a dear friend. We've worked together on a few things here and there. And, he was like, you really need to chat with these guys. I think that they want to work with you on something. And then I guess it was New York Comic Con 2019. It was right before COVID. They came to me as like, we want to work with you. And we've got a couple of scripts I'd like you to check out. And so they sent me a couple of them. And the one they sent was ENGINEWARD by George Mann. And I loved it because science fiction is probably one of my favorite genres. And I've always wanted to do something a little bit more, out there, a little bit, otherworldly, a little more cosmic. And, ENGINEWARD is basically about a universe where Earth is like long forgotten. Mankind is like spread out to the stars and they've settled on this planet. And like, there's this group of people who have done like all these body mods and stuff. And they've kind of fashioned themselves after the signs of the Zodiac. And they have all these, kind of Zodiac themed powers, for each sign of the Zodiac. And they rule this planet with an iron fist, sucking up all the resources and, basically treating the people like shit. And the story is kind of like a Chosen One kind of Star Wars story. It's this girl, her name is Joss, and she kind of has to like, go on a hero's journey to find this, treasure or whatever that will help her defeat, this evil ruling class of 12 super beings. And it's a lot. It's kind of Star Wars. It's just a little steampunk. But what made me want to draw it was like I'm such a huge Final Fantasy fan, and I was like, this could be my Final Fantasy. I could like draw all kinds of crazy. Because I love all the games. I love like all the costume designs, the character designs, weapons and stuff like that. And so I was like, I could totally do a Final Fantasy vibe on this. And so it was great. And Vault was fantastic. They were, behind the book 100%, and they're very supportive. There were scenes that George would write that had nudity, and I was like, can I draw like bare breasts? And they're like, do whatever. I'm like, okay.
You got it.
Yeah. So like I got to draw bare breasts for the first time in my career. I was like, I can't believe I'm getting away with this, but all right. I mean, it's just weird for me because I loved Vertigo comics back in like the 90s, and that was like all over Vertigo comics. But for me, like I've never drawn it because it's always been like, no, we can't have any nudity of any kind.
We're not going to get the Comics Code Authority stamp on our issue if we have that.
Exactly. So yeah, so like that was a no. But Vault was great, and Aftershock has been fantastic. I've worked with Mike Maritz there, who used to be at Marvel and DC as an editor, and he's been probably one of the absolute best editors I've ever worked with. He's so fantastic, and like Aftershock are just like they kind of have like how I have this mindset, like I just want to draw comics, I just want to make comics. They're kind of like that too. Like they just want to make good comics. So they're so encouraging creatively, and they just want you to do your best, and they're not like it's not a job to them. I mean, like I can tell they're very passionate about their comics and their various titles and stuff. And I got to work on a book just came out just last year. It was called Tales of Mother F Goose with Frank Thierry. I don't know if you guys have talked or ever met Frank. Have you met Frank?
Yeah.
Okay. Frank is a character. So You can imagine this book. It's like Quentin Tarantino's versions of Mother Goose Tales, and so it's like foul-mouthed and violent and just all kinds of crazy. But like Aftershock was absolutely behind the book 100%, and it turned out like is again like I was talking about with Morning Glories, you never know what's going to hit. So like we did this book and we're like, okay, it's done, and we'll move on to the next thing. And well, the kind of the order started coming in, and it turned out it was like because it was what kind of made me nervous was it was an oversized book. Like it wasn't like traditional comic format. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit bigger sized. And it was like their biggest ordered book or one shot that they've ever done. And the week that it came out, it was like the top reordered book at Diamond, and it outsold like every other book. I was like, that can't be right. But then Comic-Con, that site, they posted the tallies, and like they showed like we outsold Marvel's Event or whatever it was that week, and I was like, how is this even possible? But yeah, like they're fantastic, and it's just so great to work with these publishers like Vault and Aftershock who foster creativity and just like encourage you to do your best.
Yeah, Frank signed a bunch of Weapon X issues for me because that was when the book was like team of X-Men B-list characters and C-list villains.
Yeah,
would be on the same team. That. And I was like, I love all these guys. He's like, me too. That's why I wanted to write it.
He's so funny. Like he'll call me, and it's like. He's just dropping F-bomb after F-bomb, and it's hilarious. Like I almost think he's a cartoon character sometimes. I'm like, you can't be real, but and he just busts your balls all the time. I mean, like every time. Like I was, he called me once, and I had a cold, and I just was coughing on the call. He's like, you got COVID? I was like, no, I don't have
no,
COVID.
Frank.
Cold. And he just busted my ass over that, and. He can rub people the wrong way. I know he sometimes gets into trouble. He hasn't gotten canceled yet. I'm actually surprised he hasn't gotten canceled. But that there is a miracle in itself. But he's one of my favorites. I mean, I worked with him on Jughead the Hunger, and that's why we worked together on this Tales of Mother of Goose. And we're going to continue to work together because we just have such a great working relationship. So we're going to do more together.
According to the internet. ENGINEWARD, the entire 12-issue run is going to be out next month.
Yes, it comes out, I think, February 23rd.
So if you were looking to read it, you can, and you missed out on the floppies, you can buy the. Is it going to be hardcover, paper, like trade?
It's just a trade, but it is a complete story from start to finish. So if you think I'm going to pull another Morning Glories here and leave you hanging, no, this is a full story, and it's just 12 issues. So, and if you buy it, like it's one of those situations that it is similar to Morning Glories in that it's not just a job for me. It's like this is a passion project. So every page, is something that I put like, 200% of myself into because I was so passionate about the concept and the world and fleshing it out. I did so much like before we even started production of this book, and I wish we had room for it in the trade, but maybe if we get to do a hardcover, because like I did like full on concept art paintings, like environment concept art paintings for this. And I'd never actually done that for a book before. Like I'll do character designs, but like I'll never like flesh out the world. Like with Morning Glories, I was like, it's a private school. I can draw a private school. But with ENGINEWARD, since it's all an alien planet and like all the alien technology, alien I see like as in foreign, not like aliens like little gray men or whatever. But so it needed fleshing out, and so it was just so much fun to do that. So like I feel like there's so much passion in this book from me and from George, the writer, because I know this is one of his babies that he's so proud of. So it's and I really hope people will check it out and give it a chance. I mean, there's always a chance we could do a sequel. George was like actually, hinting as like I could write a sequel to this, and I was like, okay, I don't know what you would do, but yeah, I would definitely read it if you would you send me a script. So
you briefly mentioned it when discussing the premise of ENGINEWARD. I had it in my notes because I can't help myself.
Okay.
In scrolling your Twitter, I saw a tweet about 10 video games that would define you.
Oh yeah.
One of them that stuck out to me. It seems like you're a big Square fan. You also mentioned Final Fantasy, and you had on that list, and I I just did a fist pump because anytime anyone shows any love for Final Fantasy VIII, you're good in my book.
Yeah. That game is so unfairly maligned.
Right. I mean, we could do an entire episode just on the legitimacy and the misaligned hatred of Final Fantasy VIII.
Yes.
But
yeah.
Right. It's just without getting too deep into it. I appreciate that. I respect that. A lot of the other games on the list, very good games. Some I haven't played a lot of them, but I respect. I mean, Chrono Trigger is kind of like the OG.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you don't like Chrono Trigger, I mean, then what's wrong with you? But like, Final Fantasy VIII, like, I get why people get frustrated with that game and why the things that drag it down. But I loved those things. I loved junctioning. I loved I loved the gameplay. I loved the story. The story was probably one of my favorites.
Yep.
And character designs, I liked that they tried to streamline them, like look a little bit more realistic. Oh my gosh. And then like the sorceress, like her costume design, I was like, this is so cool. There's just so much aesthetic about that game that I love, and the gameplay too. I love it. Even though like the draw system and junctioning, everybody hates it, but I liked it. I don't care what they say. So yeah.
It's complicated as all hell. I still to this day barely understand it, but
sure.
I was still able to, like, as a stupid kid, it's the first game, I've probably told this story a dozen times on this show, but it's the first game that we had just gotten the original PlayStation. We got it as a birthday present for my father. He literally never touched it a single time. And I remember renting Final Fantasy VIII, having no idea what was good. Like, the only Final Fantasy I played at that point was the original, was Final Fantasy for the NES.
Wow.
And like, just the opening movie, I was video games can do this. This is a video game that I'm playing right now. It just blew my mind. I thought the characters were cool because I was a mopey, emotional teenager. So I resonated with the mopey, emotional teenager as the protagonist with Squall. But man, that game just kicked ass. I will forever be a Final Fantasy VIII apologist, or I'll have blind allegiance toward it at all times.
I've done this, I think, on at least one other podcast, but like I could honestly have just spent this entire podcast talking about Final Fantasy VIII, or even just Final Fantasy in general. That's how much of a nerd I am about it. So.
Oh man, so do you ever? I mean, there are a lot of books about games. I mean, would you ever consider, like, if someone were like, hey, I'm doing a comic book on this video game, is there one that you'd be like, holy, this is the one I need to do? Like, is there one that you would just love to do?
Oh, like an adaptation of a game?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously Final Fantasy. I mean, but I mean, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. Like, certain games I think would work. One, I think, and you're going to laugh at this one because I don't know, this just came to me because I just remembered this fan art I did years ago when this game came out. But I think around 2013 or so, there was a game on PS3 with Dante's Inferno, and it was like God of War, but in hell, like literally hell. I know God of War goes to hell, but I mean, it's like like the actual poem Dante's Inferno, but they made a God of War game out of it. And anyway, I had done some fan art, and I guess the people who made the game, like I was the only one who'd ever done any fan art, so I kept getting like all these like nice messages from people who made the game about it. Like, wow, we love that you drew our character, thank you so much. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I would totally draw that because like the aesthetics in that game, like what they did with the art direction for depicting the various circles of hell in that game, I loved. And I guess just because, I grew up in a small town in Texas, it was primarily Catholic, that, I had this like, hell, like you have this like phobia of hell. So it's like, but it's also fascinating. So like that would be one I would love to do. And I know it would just like, it would give my mother hives if I drew something like that. But I think it'd be funny.
Alex, I've been hogging it. Do you want to?
Oh, I wasn't sure if, since I wasn't sure if you wanted to get to this one, since Chew is one of your favorite books. I wasn't sure if you wanted to ask about Charlie's Angels and working with John Layman.
Oh yeah.
Wait, what are we talking? What? Did I know about this?
When it was first announced, you were like, "Oh, now that Chew's done, John Layman's doing Charlie's Angels with Joe Eisma."
Dude, I totally forgot about that. I have like 13 tabs open right now, and I missed all of that. I feel like a failure.
All right.
So I guess was that one of your? I don't know if that was like a nostalgia for you, like it was for Archie, or.
Well, that was a little before my time. Honestly, Charlie's Angels, that was, I didn't really, that was the 70s. I didn't really watch that. But I got to work with Layman, and I love Layman. And so I had been after Layman for years. I knew him like right after Morning Glories came out, because, Chew came out a year before Morning Glories. Mm-hmm. So we all kind of came up together, I was like, I got to work with this guy. I love his stuff so much. And I was after him, and he's just like, no, I don't really want to do anything. He would kind of give me some ideas or whatever, but he's like, would never send me a script. He's like, I just would rather play World of Warcraft, man. I just don't want to do any new comics or whatever. And so it was like kind of a bummer. I was like, come on, man. And we would hang out at cons, and he is like the biggest party animal. And I had the best time with him. I have the best con stories. And that's another one I could just do a complete episode on. It's just my con stories with John Layman. But I'm sure he would love that. But the editor on that book came to me, and he was like, I've got this book and it's with Layman. Would you be interested in drawing? I'm like, hell yeah, I would. And so, I would go back and watch some of the old series, but like that wasn't one of my bucket list titles or properties, but I did enjoy it. And I mean, I love drawing ladies. That's one of my favorite things to draw. So I got to draw them, and all the various kind of outfits of that time, and we had so much fun with it. We definitely ramped up the humor, because John writes humor very well. Mm-hmm. And I love humor. That's one of my favorite things to draw. I wanted to draw more of it in Morning Glories. Like, I mean, not to make it goofy like Archie. That's probably my favorite thing I got to do at Archie, was to finally, be a humor artist. Mm-hmm. But I would kind of push for at least some levity in Morning Glories. But Nick would always make the jokes like mean-spirited and stuff. And so I was like, well, that's not really the kind of humor I'm wanting to do here. But so Layman and I really ramped up the humor that really probably wasn't present in the original show, but we had a great time with it. But it didn't really do much. It didn't really move the needle, as they say. But they offered us a sequel, but it's just not really what we wanted to do. So another creative team ended up doing it instead. So, but it was just great. It was great to work with Layman and the entire team on that book, and we had a blast.
That's neat to hear. It's just when you hear about the creators that you like and they work together, and hearing that this is another thing we say on the show all the time. It's when the people you look up to turn out to be good people. It's just reassuring.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more depressing for me in this industry. Like when I'm doing a show and I meet somebody and like they're just an ass, and I've tabled next to people that I was like, I really like their work, and like they just the whole weekend they're just jerks, mm-hmm. Not just to me, but like to their fans even. And I'm like, you seem like you're not really enjoying this, so why are you doing it? Kind of deal. Yeah. So like for me, like I love this job, and the fact that I even get to do it is like such a stroke of luck that even when I do get like irritated and like just tired of being asked to when Morning Glories is coming back, like I'm still so grateful for this opportunity. And like I'm so grateful that there are fans out there that are so into my work that they want it to come back like that I would hopefully never give someone like an experience like at a show where like they would come back with a negative impression of me. Like I'm just so happy to see people and to do sketches for people and to sign books. I mean, that's just so awesome.
That speaks a lot to, I think, the person that you are. It's really easy, especially living that convention grind.
Yeah.
We've tabled at one convention twice.
3 times.
Sharing a table with our friend who's an artist, and we'll do a podcast too. And talking to a handful of people over the weekend, but also it's an excuse to have a table and we can put stuff down. But even then, it's exhausting. Not to be someone who is a successful creator who's made an Eisner nominated comic book, having people coming up to him the entire weekend. Hey, can you sign this? When's the next issue? Hey, can you sign this? When's the next issue? Can you do the sketch? To actively want to make sure that everyone has a good experience, I think speaks volumes to the person that you are. It's because it could be really easy to just be like, what do you want signed? Okay, whatever. Yep, thanks, bye. Just just give me your money.
Yeah, and I have friends that would roll into the show like at 2:00 when the show started at like 10 or something. They're sleeping in, and I'm like, man, people came by to see you. And I mean, my thing is like I tend not to stay like till the end of the show. Like New York Comic Con, the hours go oh man, it's like a 10-hour day basically at New York Comic Con. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, I love New York Comic Con. I love shows, but I'm not sitting at a table for 10 hours. So I always leave like 6:00 or something like that. I think the art deli goes to like 8. Yeah. But I was like, I can't do that. Yeah. I'm like, I can't do that. I got to go eat. I'm old. Like I gotta get in there before the crowd so I can eat something. But no, I mean, I love doing the shows. And so like, I want fans, I would like how I would like to be treated. That's how I try to treat people. And, it's kind of like the golden rule, like do unto others or whatever. It is fun. It does, like, I don't do as many shows, especially in the light of COVID, but I mean, obviously not in the light of COVID, but like even before that, I was starting to do like less shows, but like in my prime, I mean, I would do like 2 a month for like a stretch from like March to like October. And it was pretty exhausting. I mean, going all, crisscrossing the country doing those shows, but I loved it. And it was just such a great opportunity to meet people and to do art for people. And then also it's great to network. I met someone at a show at Heroes Con one year. And then like a couple years after that led to a gig at DC. So, it's like, you never know when these things are going to pay off. So it's a lot of fun, but I mean, yeah, it does get kind of tiring. And now I'm kind of to the point where I just kind of be a little bit more selective about my shows, like which ones, because to me, it's more social than it is like a financial thing. I know there are a lot of comic creators who go over there and they work that show into their like, financial success for the year. I do shows more to like, see fans. I love to do commissions, but I try not to take too many because like I have found that when I take on too many, then the quality dips. And I did have one guy write me one time, like I made the mistake of like taking on way too many commissions one day at a show. And he wrote, I really didn't like my commission. Could I get my money back? And I felt so bad because like, yeah, he showed it to me. I was like, oh God, it must have been at the end of the day. It was really bad. So I felt bad, but because it does get tiring, but like, so now I'm a little bit more selective about my shows and I go more to like, to see the fans and to see my friends, the comic creators, because we all do this in our little offices or in our houses, we don't see each other. It's a really solitary job. So doing the shows is the way to like socialize and see your friends. And I love that. I'm not so much into like the BarCon anymore. BarCon was, I know there was a lot of negativity about BarCon a couple of years ago because of like harassment and stuff. And, I've never been in those kinds of situations where it was like shady or anything, but like, I just prefer like, getting together with friends, you hang out in the lobby or you hang out at a bar with a small group of comic creators that you're friends with and hanging out. I mean, that's just so much fun.
Yep. I get that. All right. I had one more thing to touch on. Alex, did you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Do you want to hit? Okay. So my last thing before we wind down here. Right. How'd you do on today's Wordle?
Oh man, I got it in 4. I was so happy the other day I got it in 2. I was like, I don't ever post my Wordles, but I posted that one. I was like, hell yeah, man, I got it in 2.
Today's took me 5. It was embarrassing. I should have had it in 4, missed it by 1 letter. I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
But I did get 1 in 2. I got 1 in 2 tries, and I rode that high for like 6 hours.
Hell yeah! Ride that high. That's a good one.
God, I've played a lot of addicting things in my life, but Man, Wordle's so much fun. It's just, it's stupid. It's stupid, but
but I love it.
It's just, it's not trying to sell you anything. There's no ads. You get one a day, so you can't just marathon it and it gets old after an hour. It's just
true.
It keeps you coming back.
That is true. And I only started playing like a couple of weeks ago, but I found a website. Some dude archived all the other ones. So I've gone back from starting from number 1. And
Wow.
I took like an hour. I went to I did 11 of them in one sitting. I was like, I got to stop. I can't do this.
Oh, man. All right. But seriously, anyways, we should probably start to wrap up. We actually managed to get through this despite all the internet issues and of course the people at home aren't going to know because of movie magic, but this has been a fun one to record, both facetiously and also in real life. It's been great talking.
I've had a great time. Thank you.
Before we wrap up, in case people weren't aware of where they could go if they wanted to, things are kind of sketchy with Omicron, so I don't know if appearances are happening, but if someone wanted to find your work, where could they go to do so?
I'm all over the socials. My username is SupaJoe, SUPAJOE. And Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm trying to think what else. I don't know what else there is. Those are pretty much the only ones I use. I don't have a Patreon anymore. I used to have one. But the socials are the best place to reach me. And shows, I don't have any lined up just yet. I was going to do one in New Orleans, but that was the beginning of the year. But then, Omicron and everything, so I didn't do that show. So I haven't done a show yet. I'm hoping I can do some shows this year. I kind of miss getting out there and doing some more. I did New York last year, and it was great. Reed Pop had all kinds of safety measures in place, and it was so awesome. The show was fantastic. It was a lot smaller scale than normal, but it was still great, and I want to do it again. So, that's me, SupaJoe.
Excellent. This has been an absolute blast, Joe. We really appreciate you coming on. Best of luck with the future. Hopefully, we'll eventually get some more Morning Glories, but until then, I'm excited to see what else you come out with. ENGINEWARD again comes out next month in the collected format. So if anyone wants to go snag that, check with your LCS. Make sure they order it.
Yes.
Other than that, Joe, thanks again for coming on. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time.
Awesome. So that's going to do it for this episode. Until next time, I've been JR.
I'm Alex.
And I've been Joe.
And this has been episode 444 of Opinions May Vary. Hey everyone, if you liked that episode, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Opinions May Vary, and on Twitter and YouTube at OMV Podcast. You can also find us on Spotify or on our very own website at omvpodcast.com. And if you're looking for merch, we have stickers and pins available over at omvpodcast.bigcartel.com while supplies last. As always, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and we will see you next time.